Howdy folks, I'm CalebDMTG. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm awake, I'm hype, I'm fresh, I'm full of pep and Red Bull. Red Bull pep. Good stuff. Here to finish the rest of my set of review for Throne of Eldraine. This video is going to be a bit longer. Since it's covering a lot more ground than the first two. So I'm up a little bit earlier than I normally would be in the day, and I fit it in before my usual stream. I'm wearing my Lucky Clutch shirt. Gotta represent. There's nothing that could go wrong here. There are some juicy modern cards in Eldraine, and I had a blast hashing out sweet lists. I probably spent a little bit too much time mucking around with deck lists, but I enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoy the review, overview. Anyway, as always, much love to Wizards for sponsoring this series. Magic's been a huge part of my life since I was 10 years old. And aside from simply making it as a streamer and a content creator, this is probably the most validating thing that's ever happened to me. I truly do not have the words, which is why I'm still talking. Move it along, Caleb. Alright, let's start off with an aside on Adamant, which is largely a limited mechanic with maybe one exception. Adamant does something special if you use at least 3 of a specific type of mana to cast a spell. White for a white Adamant card, black for a black card, so on. Adamant rewards you for having a heavy color commitment, so once you get one card with an Adamant perk, it incentivizes you to draft that color more heavily, including other Adamant cards. So usually in the limited 2-color decks, I like to have a 9/8 mana base, where I'm most likely to have at least one of each color. The Adamant mechanic is a strong reason to go 10-7 or maybe even 11-6 in some cases in order to more consistently squeeze power out of these spells. Of course, a lot of these cards aren't worth warping your mana base around because they're just not powerful enough, and they're more of a, well, I'm playing this card anyway, so I guess this extra ability is nice to have. Oh, they are a slight perk for being monocolor, aren't they? Yeah, that might be a thing. Monocolor might be a thing in this set. So let's start with what I think are filler cards. Cards that you're most likely to include just to fill out your curve. Maybe you're light on creatures, just need an extra body. One of these is Hingewalker. The card is fine, very unexciting. Hard to have triple of a color on turn 3, which is when a turn 3 3/3 is at its best. It moves up to solid in a monocolor deck. How many of those are you going to see, right? Alright, Embereth Paladin. The difference between a 4/1 and a 5/2 isn't that great, because it's going to trade with things anyway. It has a relevant creature type, well that's about all you can say for it. Ardenvale Paladin. From what we've seen in the set, a 3/6 is fairly large, but I still don't think that Ardenvale is a reason to go heavy into white. It's simply a minor payoff for already being there. And then there's Rally for the Throne. 2 1/1s for 3 mana just isn't great. it's not much value. That said, life gain is always a little bit better in limited, since racing is more likely and every deck is trying to attack for the most part, so it's possible this card just surprises me. Could be wrong on that one. Next category, quality cards. Searing Barrage is a removal spell that becomes a larger Chandra's Outrage if you use enough red mana. This card is great. it's really good. 5 mana is a lot, but I'd still play to like 3+ copies of this card in the right deck, right? Simply casting this card is helping you kill your opponent while you're killing their creatures. I love it. Alright, Outmuscle is a solid removal spell. Most of the time, the adamant part of the card will be irrelevant, but it's nice to have, especially if it's lethal, right? Once and Future. It's hard to evaluate this sort of card. A double regrowth could hold together some sort of constructed value or combo engine, or it could never find a home. In some limited formats, it's going to be great to the point of like close to being a bomb, and in others, it's way too slow to be the point of being uncastable and you'll almost never play it. So we're just going to have to try and see on this one. Clockwork Servant. Who doesn't love drawing cards? This little gnome is great. Could see it in a monocolor Artifact Matters deck in Standard, but that might be stretching things. This card is probably just not good enough for Standard Reanimator. Adamant does add an interesting bit of play to the card, because you can Desperation cast without any creatures in the graveyard, or you can cast it with a medium creature in the graveyard and hit a better creature. Or if you're worried about decking, you can tap differently so that you're not self-milling. and avoid the ability altogether. It's interesting. It's interesting. Vantress Paladin. 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer is below rate, and 3/3 and above is above rate. The card is either great or meh, but even the meh isn't too embarrassing. So getting a few of these at common is a good reason to go heavier blue, for sure. Locthwain Paladin, real similar. If you can turn on the adamant of this card, it's a good reason to be heavy that color, for sure. Garenbrig Paladin is similar to these other two paladins that I just mentioned, but the base stats are fine even without the adamant. So, card should see a lot of limited play. Unexplained Vision is probably better in sealed than draft, but draw 3, scry 3 is potentially game swinging level of value if you can find the time to actually cast it. So it's going to be bomby in a slower limited format. And again, in a fast format, a super fast one, which I don't think Throne of Eldraine is, it would be much worse, right? Silver Flame Ritual. For some reason, I'm having a hard time evaluating this one. 4 mana is a lot for a sorcery, but on the other hand, you're going to want to cast this once you've played out most of your creatures anyway, so the cost shouldn't matter too much. The more evasion you have, the better this card looks. The more board stally the format is, the better this card looks. If you trade aggressively or run fewer creatures, this card is quite bad. So a lot depends on your deck, a lot depends on the format. Overall, I could see wanting to play multiples. Like if you want the first one, why wouldn't you want the second copy? Which is why I think this is better than regular filler, but be careful about the type of decks that you run this in. Foreboding Fruit. What a great card name, huh? What a great card name. The flavor in this set is tremendous. Yeah, it's just actually tremendous. I love it. Yeah, the flavor is really good in the set. The names, the flavor text, all of that's awesome. And the art direction is also phenomenal as well. I'm going to say this once and like maybe another like 10 billion times, I don't know. But Cynthia Shepard, the senior art director for Magic, really knocked it out of the park with this set. And the individual artists with all their individual cards did as well. There's so much good art. It's incredible. Anyway, let's get back to the overview. Foreboding Fruit. The difference between this card with Adamant and without is pretty big. In some matchups, it's the difference in being able to cast this or not. And in some decks, having the extra food is a huge deal. Turn into a Pumpkin. A lot of value for a pump spell. A lot of value worked into there. I do think there is one constructed quality card with Adamant, and that's Slaying Fire. I mean, Char is still good enough, right? 3 mana, 4 damage. Seems awesome. Alright, now it's truly time for the rest. Oh man. So, I'm going to be covering all of the cards that I didn't cover in the first 2 videos. And that's a lot of cards. So buckle your seatbelts. Buckle my seatbelt. Buckle that person's seatbelt. There's nobody over there. Alright, we're going to start with the filler. The categories, in this category, the cards range from totally fine, but not something I want in multiples very often, to borderline unplayable. Try very hard not to play this card ever. So that's what we're working with here. Not a hard and fast rating scale. We're really just trying to break things into categories so they're easier to parse, easier to get through. Number 1! They're not actually numbered. There's no order here. Lost Legion. Scry 2 is pretty good. And if you're heavy black, this card will usually make the cut. That said, you only want so many 3 mana 2/3s. This isn't a high pick or a reason to consider black or anything like that. So I consider it filler. Forever Young is closer to Raise Dead than Soul Salvage. Soul Salvage, great value. Forever Young, not great value. Still okay. That's fine, but it's filler. So Tiny is a fun little card. Tricks that only shrink power are kind of meh, though. Later on, it'll be closer to pseudo removal, especially if you can use it to like make a evasive threat ineffectual. But it's not consistent or anything like that. Usually meh, sometimes fine, definitely not exciting. Not looking to play this card. I'm sure I'll lose to a deck that has like 10 of them at some point, though. Overwhelming Apprentice. So if this was a 2 mana 1/3 or 2/1, this card would be amazing. But I think the weak power and toughness stats make it miss most of the time. I'm actively trying not to play this card. Beloved Princess. This is some of my favorite art in the set. Love the creepy beasts hidden in the trees. 1 mana 1/1s aren't great in general. And I don't see a ton to make me think that they'll be better than usual in this set. The pseudo evasion is better than nothing though. Especially if you could pump the princess up to a 3/3+, because then she either goes unblocked or wins combat. Not looking to draft this one highly, but if you're already if you're already playing pump spells, like I know there's a 4 mana +3/+3 aura that we'll look at later on. Kind of a combo here. Is it a good combo? I don't know. It's just a combo. It'll beat some people. It might beat me. It'll beat me at the pre-release. I'm calling it now. I'm going to lose to Beloved Princess at the pre-release. I'm going to feel very weird about it. All right, Flutterfox. If you can turn this card on reliably, it moves up to quality filler. But as is, the base stats make me think that it's just filler. Net of the Keep, vanilla card. Definition of filler. Outflank is a card where the stock rises if you're short on removal, but you can get blown out by pump spells. Usually 1-2 of this sort of effect is good, but not a key part of any deck. Righteousness is the sort of card I hate. It can get the job done, but in the end it's a condemn that requires a blocker. Best case, the block induces a pump spell from the opponent, and then you get to like next level their pump spell with Righteousness. It's not good. Try not to play this card unless you have like a really, really good reason. Shining Armor. The flash is nice. The free equip is nice, but this is not generally worth a card. You have to have like a lot of equipment synergies before you're like, oh man, +0/+2. Yeah, okay. Mantle of Tides it's not that this card is hard to trigger, it's that it's not remotely good enough when you have to pay full price. Venerable Knight. I mean, it's fine. It's certainly not worse than a Goblin Piker, and it gets downright decent when you have other Knights handy, but it shouldn't be a high pick. Could be decent in a constructed Knights deck. Corridor Monitor. Oh, what a fun little thing. This card will shine in Artifact Matters decks that can abuse the untap, but it's also just going to be quite good in slower, dirtily controlled decks or Blue-White Skies decks that want a Horned Turtle type card to gum up the ground. Didn't say please. Not a fan of counters in Limited, since they're pretty rough off the top of the old library. Still solid in slower control decks. Note that there are payoffs for your opponents having cards in their graveyard in this set. So it's possible that Milling 3 and the counterspell itself puts a card in the opponent's graveyard, so it's putting 4 cards in the opponent's graveyard. So if you have cards that are like, this does something sweet if your opponent has 7 cards in their graveyard, if you counter a single spell with this, that's like all of a sudden over half of that, right? So maybe the stock goes way up in this format. It's possible. Frogify. I think this card is worse than an actual pacifism because sometimes 1/1s can combine blocks, chump, or pick up equipment and be useful. If the opponent is aggressively curving out and you have to turn the 2/1s into 1/1s, you're just going to get run over. That said, it's still an answer to bombs, so 1 copy is usually welcome. Mistforward River Turtle. Fine blocker with a sometimes relevant attacking ability. Card might be better than I think it is, but I assume you only want 0 or 1 most of the time. Wishful Merfolk. This is the sort of card where as a 3/3 it'd be too good, and as a 3/2 it's wholly unexciting. It just doesn't excite me at all. You have to pay mana to attack with it, and then it trades with your opponent's 2/1s. Like, anyway. Eye Collector. Ooh, collect them eyeballs. It's if a Twitch streamer was a Magic card, right? I'd be collecting the eyes. Flying is nice, but 1 mana 1/1s have their work cut out for them. There are some cards that play well if the opponent has Threshold, so perhaps I'm underestimating it as an enabler there. Lash of Thorns. Usually I want my pump spells to save the creature I'm pumping and win combat rather than just make trading easier. I would rarely play this spell if ever. Bloodhaze Wolverine. This probably moves up to quality in blue-red, but in mono-red, it's going to be vanilla most of the time. There is a red common that can turn it on. It's nice that you can get that the first strike like mid-combat to like blow out the opponent. Overall, this is not going to be a high pick. It's going to be quite good in some decks, though. Barge In is the sort of card that a lot of very good players are going to underestimate. And I know this because they underestimated Built to Smash. Built to Smash was really good pump spell back in Kaladesh. It was pretty consistent that as an aggro red deck, you could force your opponent into a spot where they're making trades or they're doing double blocks, and then you played Built to Smash and got to blow them out while getting in damage, and it was just this huge swing for a pump spell. And you could play like a ton of them. This card is clearly worse, right? +2/+2, not as good as +3/+3. But worse than great might land it at solidly good. Played in your aggro decks. Maybe even played in multiples. Obviously becomes unplayable if you're interested in blocking, but that was never Red's strong suite anyway, right? Who cares about blocking? Tap them sideways, blow them out with Barge In. Blow Your House Down. Maybe this is a one-of in certain aggro decks, but it's super fillery. You probably don't want to main deck it very often. It could be a sideboard card for certain matchups, especially if the opponent's playing walls, right? Good sideboard against houses, so you can blow them down. Yeah. You get it. Brimstone Trebuchet. Not the most aggressive card ever created, but it has a lot of neat smaller things going for it. Great in a board stall, helps create said board stall by blocking nicely. Nice bit of reach in more ways than one. I would not always play this card. If you're playing an aggressive, like, smash deck, then you probably don't have a lot of room for a 3-mana 1/3. But it's going to overperform in some archetypes. Some archetypes are going to want multiples of this thing and just, like, sit there and ping you until you're dead. Claim the Firstborn. Threat and effects can be quite good and limited, but usually because you're taking the opponent's best creature on a crucial turn. So you're racing. They're like, play this giant blocker, serve at you. And you're like, I'll take that giant blocker and murder you. Claim the Firstborn doesn't do that. Sometimes you can use threat and effects as removal when combined with a sacrifice outlet. But again, removal is great when it deals with the opponent's best creature. This likely isn't hitting the best creature. So even though it's only 1 mana, I'm way less interested in this card than a normal threat and effect. Crystal Slipper. The first copy of this could be quite good, especially if you have Equipment Matters synergies, but I wouldn't want multiples because drawing 2 seems largely useless, right? Ferocity of the Wilds is certainly playable in a go-wide weenie deck, but it's awful with fewer creatures and a more generic curve. Be careful about when you play this. Fling is an oldie but a goodie. It's a Lava Axe for the win, it's removal, and it's something to do with a creature that's dying anyway, or a creature that ate a pacifism early on. Don't fill up on these unless you have good reason, but 1 is usually good. 1's usually fine. Raging Redcap. The fact that this card and Bargain are both commons means there's going to be a red aggro deck where you play as many copies of both and just murder people when they try and block. It's the sort of deck that I love because it's full of cards that nobody else wants, and it's very explosive. And without pump spells, Raging Redcap is very fillery though. So don't take it highly, don't play it in everything, but once you're already in the like pump my creature, murder your face business, load up. just load up. It'll be good. I promise. 7 Dwarves. In Limited, this card gets decent if you have 4 or more of them. Most of the time, it's the definition of filler, right? A couple of this card, not exciting. 7 of this card, very exciting. Skullknocker Ogre. 4-mana 4/3s are fine, but wow, is that ability high variance. Attacking with this card is kind of a risk since if the opponent has something worth protecting, they can like block or trade or kill it. If they have a handful of trash, they can block something else and hope you loot away one of their extra lands into something worthwhile. It's especially awkward because of how games play out in the late game. Players have a tendency to sandbag a land to bluff. So then you like play this card off the top when you're both hellbent on an empty board, and the opponent's like, oh, so this land gets to be turned into something sweet. Awesome. Take 4. Loot away. Obviously, taking 4 damage isn't exactly free, but the ability is a downside more often than it's an upside. And lately, we've been seeing 4-mana 4/3s that have a slight upside in red. Weaselback Redcap. This card is a solid mana sink, but you don't want to draw multiples since you only have so much extra mana. So 1/2 in the right deck. It does trade up once you have the mana to pump, and it can hit for a whole lot in the late game, which is not nothing for a 1-drop. I do like cards that scale well. Rosenthorn Halberd. The downside to a card like Unholy Strength is that you can get blown out by a bounce spell or a removal spell. As an equipment, this doesn't have that downside, but 5 mana is a hefty equip cost. It's a really big equip cost. This card doesn't excite me, but it is playable. It's a lot better if you have creatures that can reduce your equip cost, right? And there are a few of those floating around. Sporecap Spider. This is a fairly format-dependent card. It doesn't attack well, but it blocks basically everything, so it really depends on how good blocking is in your green decks. Could be borderline unplayable, could be a really important piece in some archetypes. Tall as a beanstalk! There are some solid combos with pump spells, like Double Strikers at common, but overall you don't want to play pump auras if you can avoid it. Crashing Drawbridge. Some people really like this card. I like Walls as much as the next person, but I'm not quite sold on this one. A lot of the decks that want an early blocker don't care very much about how quickly they kill the opponent. So in blue-black, with like fewer creatures, a lot of removal spells, a lot of like card drawing and counters and stuff, probably doesn't care if the creature that it plays eventually to kill the opponent has haste, right? It's just not that aggressive. I could see some blue-white Flyers decks caring about haste and also wanting the early blocker. I could see it in slower green decks maybe. But yeah, overall, I think this card will be overplayed. Ginger Brute. Low power, but a food that's also a creature is interesting. It's efficient enough that it might see constructed play if some kind of food aggro deck is a thing. If there's a food-based engine deck that also carries about a 1/1 body, this card will be a 4 of in that, right? Heraldic Banner. is a card where, unless I somehow draft a monocolor deck for the half pump to be interesting, the banner isn't good enough to, it's not a good enough mana rock to play unless I really have to. Inquisitive Puppet, there's so much text on this little thing. There's so much text. It's probably not large enough stats for limited play, but it's so efficient that maybe it actually sees a constructed use. Jousting Dummy is a colorless knight for decks that want it. Not great, it's filler, whatever. Fill your deck. Let's move on. Lochthwain Gargoyle. I probably never want to play this unless there's a lot of artifact synergies going on. Roving Keep is hard to attack into. Usually I'm a fan of giant late game bodies like this, but 7 mana to attack is a ton. It basically means that you have to choose between attacking and playing whatever you draw for the turn, which means you should not play this card very often. It's not good overall. Yeah, very rarely. Shambling Suit is not an amazing build around for artifacts, since your opponent can trade with it fairly easily, but it is great if you're looking to do the artifact thing already. It is cute that food buffs it. Signpost Scarecrow is a 4-mana 2/4. Not what I'm looking to play in general, but the stats are better than what we've seen paired with its ability recently in Prismite. The fixing might be more relevant in this format too, with the Adamant mechanic. Sorcerer's Broom. I wouldn't pick this card unless I was doing very dirtily sacrifice things. But there are dirtily sacrifice things to do in this format, and this card does get out of control if that's what you're about. So it's possible that I'm underrating this card as filler, but it will be filler in most decks. Weapon Rack, probably a little too clunky to play often. It could get better with evasive threats or decks that don't care about artifacts. Or decks that do care about artifacts. Yes. Next category. This next category is the quality cards, which is pretty self-explanatory. They're early picks that aren't quite bombs, so you're more likely to abandon them if the color isn't open. And or maybe if you need to go get some milk and cigarettes. And you're not likely to switch for them either. But your best decks will have a lot of cards in this range. Quality. You want quality cards for quality decks. Card number 1, Baked into a Pie. Removal is always good, especially pie-based removal. Love it. Looks delicious. I think it was, what's the line? Keep your enemies close and then also bake them into a pie. I think that was the line. I think that was it. Archon of Absolution is kind of like Windborn Muse. Quality creature, high pick, but not a reason to go into white. Prized Griffin is good quality. 5 mana, 3/4, always great. Trapped in a Tower is worse than a pacifism, but it's still decent. It's still a decent card. True Love's Kiss is usually a main deck disenchant. Or, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. Usually, a main deck disenchant would be simply filler. This one draws a card. We've seen it in green. I think it was Slice in 2 or something. Split in something. 2 green, uncommon. You pretty much always main decked it because value is so good. And this card is that. Youthful Knight. First strike is a good ability. Hard to block, hard to attack into. Great with Pump and other first strikers. Charmed Sleep is quality removal, and removal is always good. Fairy Vandal. The strength of this card is entirely dependent on how many draw spells and cantrips you can get into your deck, though even a single trigger gives you a reasonable body in limited. Moonlit Scavengers. Even a situational Mana War is good, and this one has a pretty decent body for blue and for the format. Run Away Together. I'm gonna take a moment to comment on this art because oh my god, I can't stop smiling every time I look at it. It's so derpy, it's so happy, it's so like bright, and oh man, there's a whole story there. It's not a complicated story, but there's a whole story there, and it makes me smile. Well, this art is great. Some of my favorite in the set. Anyway, the card itself is definitely better in some decks than others, but the ability to rebuy adventure creatures makes me think this card is going to be better than usual. If your opponent uses enchantment-based removal on your creature, you can reset that creature while also getting a tempo bounce on the opponents. It's good. Sage of the Falls. The first copy of this card seems really good for not flooding out. So you want the first copy very highly, and then after that, there's diminishing returns, because the effect, doesn't stack very well, does it? Steelgaze Griffin. 5 mana for a 2/4 flyer is too much, but it doesn't take long for a 4/4 flyer to end games. So it really depends on the composition of your deck, how consistent you can trigger its pump ability. If you can trigger it at all, if you can't trigger it at all, this becomes regular filler. But if you can trigger it half the time that you're attacking, this card is very, very good. Sir Eleonora the Discerning, values value. Not happy to first pick this, but if I saw it 5th pick, I'd see that as a signal. Tome Raider, what a cute name. What an adorable name. Stats don't have to be very impressive if it has draw a card on it. This card has draw a card on it. How about that? Witching Well. Scrying for land drops early and then cashing in for value late is a very nice pairing of abilities. And I'd like to think that this card is quality, but we'll see. Sometimes underpowered, efficient artifacts end up making their way into Constructed as enablers for some broken nonsense or other as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this showed up somewhere. Black Lance Paragon. Impressive art, unimpressive card. Should be an Ambush Viper on defense if there were more first striking knight action in the format. It'd have more of a chance to blow out combat, and I'd rate it higher. Maybe I missed a lot of it, but I didn't think there were that many first striking knights. There are a lot of knights. Knight is a relevant creature type. Possibly I'm underestimating this one, but overall, I think it's more on the quality filler as opposed to like a limited bomb. Festive Funeral. In some decks, this card is going to be too clunky and inconsistent, and in others, it's going to be quality removal. Instant speed is nice, so even if you can't kill a creature, you can still shrink it to win combat. Memory Theft. This card reminds me of Toll of the Invasion a lot, which ended up being a really solid discard spell that you'd always play and would sometimes go up to multiple copies of. This card's floor is lower, where you can end up not getting any value at all sometimes, but it also has a much higher ceiling of answering an important threat before the opponent gets a chance to actually play it from exile. Since Memory Theft is a common, it's a very important one to keep in mind when you're sequencing your adventure spells as well. Sometimes sometimes you might try and play the adventure and then immediately play the creature, for example, to not get 2-for-1'd by this card. Let's move on. Next card, Reeve's Soul. What a impressive name, huh? Reeve's Soul. It's fun to say. This will have enough targets to be consistently good, but it's in the same range as deal 3 damage to a creature, so it's clearly quality removal, right? Wicked Guardian. The stats are fillerish, but if you add draw a card most of the time to a card, it becomes interesting. Draft multiples and pair them with early X3s for consistency. Could get a really good deck that way, with cards that you might maybe getting fairly later. Malevolent Noble. Some chunk of games, this is just going to be a 2-2, but it does eat dying creatures, pacified creatures, and importantly, food tokens. It's hard to attack into, hard to block. 2 mana is kind of a lot for this effect, but it's a 2-drop that scales well, and that's something special. Revenge of Ravens. I was originally skeptical that this was even playable as filler, but after thinking about it more, I'm not so sure. If you stack multiples, it seems vicious. Your opponent's 2x creatures can no longer deal you damage, and 3x's are losing the trade because they take 2 damage and only deal 1 damage overall. So one is probably just good a lot of the time, and 2+ seems kind of busted. Fortunately, it's an uncommon, so it's not exactly easy to stack multiples in limited, but when you do, it's going to be pretty vicious. Burning Yard Trainer. Not unplayable without the Knight bit. Would be excited to play multiples in a deck with Knight synergies. Joust! Prey Upon has a good chance of getting blown out, so it's like less good than a lot of similar green-style removal spells. But if you're actually pumping a creature while killing the opponent's creature with some consistency, this becomes a very strong card. Ogre Errant. Normal curve filler without Knight synergies, but Menace is a great limited ability, and I'd be happy to jam multiples of this card, even if they're only turned on by each other. Card's good. Redcap Melee. You don't want multiples of this card when you're stalled on mana, but removal is great, and it's so very, very efficient. I would always play the first copy in very aggressive decks, and said aggressive decks are going to be excited to play multiples. Could be a constructed sideboard card. Redcap Raiders. 3 mana for a 3-2 is the definition of filler, and I almost never play 3-2 vanillas. That said, this isn't vanilla. The ability is quite good. Attacking as a 4-3 trampler on turn 4 is great. You can put as many of these as you want into your deck. It's good. Scorching Dragonfire. Great removal spell is great. Not much to say here. Thrill of Possibility. In some limited formats, this would be kind of fillery, but in this format, Instant Speed Tormenting Voice is great. It triggers all of the when you've drawn your second card for the turn cards, and it does it at instant speed. As far as Constructed is concerned, I've played Tormenting Voice in Modern before, so this should be just fine in Standard Reanimator as well. Or the standard blue-red deck. Probably going to be a thing, huh? Tenrith's Transformation. If this card didn't draw a card, it'd be terrible, but it turns out that when a card replaces itself, its effect doesn't have to be incredible. You can buff your own dork, turn their mythic into a 3-3, sure, whatever. Cantrip, yep, deal. Oakham Adversary. This card is good. It trades with everything, and it has an ability that makes the opponent want to block it. So, yeah. Surferin the Hengehammer, solidly above average in Limited. It has the stats where it could actually show up in Standard, maybe. Drown into the Loch, not an early game removal spell in slash counter, but in the right deck with some enabling, it should be quality. In a deck where you aren't milling the opponent at all, like none amount, it gets much worse. Maraleaf Pixie. This card doesn't quite fit into any of my categories, but it's good enough for Limited and Constructed. Not great pack one, pick one, since it's not a powerful build around, but it starts to become exciting once you're already in those colors. Shine Chaser. A 3-mana 1/1 Vigilance Flyer is bad. A 2/2 is solid, and a 3/3 is fantastic. You're not going to have a 3/3 on turn 3 very often, but if you're playing auras for removal, and you have random food tokens lying around anyway, this card should be consistently good. Enchanted Carriage. Coming into play with a few bodies is more value than vehicles usually get, and it's enough to, and it comes in with enough power to crew and block on the first turn that it enters play. This is a fantastic early pick if you're looking to stay open, because you'll play this in pretty much any deck. Golden Egg. A 2-mana Chromatic Star is a bit below rate, but a cantripping food token seems great if that's something you care about. Unlike Chromatic Star, the cantrip is front-loaded, which does help you hit your early land drops, and then you can cash this in later to help pay for like the Adamant for a card or something. Prophet of the Peak. Similar to Enchanted Carriage, where you can take it early and play it in basically anything. 6 mana for a 5/5 isn't super exciting, but scrying away lands in the late game is very good. It's going to be very easy to underrate this card. It's good. Scalding Cauldron. Not exciting, but a totally serviceable removal spell. Spinning Wheel. Now this is a sweet mana rock. Early game it accelerates and fixes. Late game it's a mana sink. Love it. Next category, limited bombs and build-arounds. So not all of these cards are bombs, but the ones that aren't are build-arounds that can have a bomby feel in the right deck. Most of these cards are early picks. For starters, Sir Conrad the Grim. While you could try this as a constructed engine with cards like Doom Whisperer and Creeping Chill, I'm guessing the base stats just aren't good enough. Great limited card though. Sir Alan the Lion's Claw. The stats are belly-rubbing good. A 4/4 first strike that pumps your team is pack one, pick one material. Folio of Fancies. This card kind of reminds me of Sands of Delirium, though it should be a bit worse most of the time, since you could potentially draw the opponent into an answer to the folio itself with the first ability. That's good though, because Sands was kind of messed up. It was kind of a messed up card. Still, Folio's nut draw is faster. If you play Folio on turn 2 on the play, and jam the second ability on turn 3, you should race everything that isn't a fast aggro draw. If your opponent doesn't have a 2-drop and you activate on their draw step, that's going to mill for 8 with the first activation. And then even if they play a card, still mill for 7 on turn 4, then 6, and then turn 6 they have 2 cards left in their library, assuming that they curved turns 3 through 5. Could be a constructed player, but I'd be surprised. Could be like a weird sideboard card for Control Mirror. Yeah, probably not. Probably not, but maybe. The nice thing about this sort of effect in Limited is that people are starting with 40 cards, so it's much, much easier to deck somebody. Stolen by the Fae. Might be a little slow in Constructed, but a bounce spell that spits out at least like 3 1/1 flyers is something of a limited bomb. I could be underestimating its constructed potential, but I think it's more of a limited card. Borrow Witches. This card is stinky with 0 knights. It's good to find with 3-ish, and kind of great with 5+. The quality of knights you're rebuying matters too, of course. Belle of the Brawl, another sweet name, another great flavor card. Good stats, not a huge reason to be knights, but not a terrible payoff either. Piper of the Swarm. An efficient body generator that starts stealing creatures is a limited bomb for sure. Mad Ratter. The card ranges from unplayable to bomby, but will usually be unplayable. Since the payoff is so huge, you're only going to need to trigger it a few times for it to be quite good. Probably in blue-red, I would imagine. Unfortunately, the 1/2 body might be too fragile to actually stick around to get that value. It might be too easy for the opponent to deal with. We'll see. Opportunistic Dragon. For the most part, the ability is a situational Dungeon Geist type ability where you're incapacitating a human or an artifact for a while, but then you can't actually use that artifact or human. There are some niche situations where you have an extra permanent to sacrifice, like the opponent plays an Edict on you, you can sack the creature that you took with the dragon. Anyway, overall, I don't think this card is quite good enough for Constructed. I don't think it's a player there, but obviously it is a limited bomb, right? It just has the stats. Sundering Stroke. Limited bomb, too clunky for Constructed. Of course, if you can play it for only red mana, it starts to look pretty good, like better than a kicked Fight with Fire. But consistently getting 7 red mana seems hard. Maybe it's meant to be paired with Ironcrag Feet. Maybe that's just good enough. I don't know. I don't know. We'll get to Ironcrag Feet in a bit. That's another card that I'm not quite sold on. Anyway, this could be a card that I'm underestimating. Maybe it'll actually just like see a ton of play in Constructed. Maybe 7 red mana is not that hard, and it's just good. Sir Kara the Bold lacks the stats for Constructed. Seems kind of busted and limited. Keeper of the Fables, 5 mana for a 4/5 that sometimes draws cards is strong. Yeah, not an embarrassing early pick at all. In some games, you'll hit with some evasive threat for a while, and this ability will just hard carry the game. In other games, it'll just be a 4/5. Note that you're only drawing 1 card, regardless of how many creatures you're hitting the opponent with. Escape to the Wilds. It depends on your curve, but in the right deck, you're going to get 3-ish cards worth of value and a whole lot of filtering. I think it's going to play out a lot like a red-green copy of Urban Evolution, which was kind of nuts in the right deck, but a little clunky for aggro. Not a card that's good in like super aggressive, fast limited formats, but a card that's like really, really good in slower, dirtly formats. Note that this doesn't work with adventure. You need to cast an adventure card for the card to go on an adventure. I think that a fancy, expensive Light of the Stage is probably unplayable and Constructed. I could be wrong on that. Maybe there are decks in these colors that just want this effect. I did see someone brewing with Niv Mizzet, and they were already including Escape to the Wilds. Partially because it's a Niv Mizzet hit, but partially because just finding Niv is probably pretty good, huh? Rumgully the Generous, a card that's powerful enough to draw you towards playing multiple colors early on. Exact idea for this category. A 3 mana 3/3 is solid, and it doesn't need to spread many 1/1 counters to become great. Improbable Alliance is a great limited great limited build around that also self-enables and triggers your other card draw matters cards to boots. 1/1 flyers for free are probably good enough for Constructed. This could be as good as Bitter Blossom in the right deck. It won't make a token every single turn, but not paying life is pretty nice too, and sometimes it'll trigger on your turn and the opponent's. Inspiring Veteran is a good lord for the Boros Knights deck. It's a great card. It's going to be a core part of the standard Knights deck too, if there is one that's playable. This card will be a 4 of. Lochmere Serpent is a limited bomb. Love the art too. In regards to Constructed, I don't think this card quite gets there. The stats paint it as like a control finisher, probably out of the sideboard after the opponent boards out their removal. And it will win some games. People will play it, it will win some games. I think the issue is that it's just a little too easy to answer. Even if it can come back to hand for 2 mana, it still needs to be recast after that point. I might be spoiled, but a lot of these expensive finishers lately have been like nigh on unkillable and still barely make the cut in control sideboards. Outlaws Merriment! This card is a limited bomb and a ton of fun. This is one of those cards that I don't have much hope for in Constructed, but will have fun brewing around and trying to make work anyway. Steelclaw Lance is a card that does a lot better than a lot of the equipment in the format. Super good at Knights decks. Probably Constructed playable, right? If you have a lot of Knights that care about equipment stats and what. Wintermoor Commander. Great 2-drop is great. Nothing about this card is busted, but there are a lot of good parts working together. Arcanist's Owl. Prettiest bird since Baleful Strix. 4 mana for a 3/3 flyer is already great, and the comes into playability is just value. It's got a prohibitive casting cost. It's right on the cusp of being a good incentive to try going blue-white. So if you see this really early on, it's like almost be like, oh yeah, I'll take that and go blue-white flyers. It's almost there. In a weaker packet is that. It's like, okay, well, I can hedge towards maybe being this color combination and then having this good card as opposed to taking a bad card. But if I was in pack 1, pick 1, and I saw this and a quality removal spell, I would probably actually take the removal spell. Covetous Urge is an early pick in blue-black, but not a reason to be blue-black. 4 mana is a lot for a discard spell, but it does remove one of the downsides to discard in that it's a solid spell well into the late game. In fact, it might be better at grabbing something from the opponent's graveyard way down the line. Probably best in Sealed, where you have more time for dirtly nonsense, and people have more bombs in Sealed, so the payoff is higher too. Deathless Knight. We've got another prohibitive casting cost, a strange set of abilities. Food does recur it, which means it's a lot better in this format than it would be in other formats. Elite Headhunter has lower stats than I'd like for this casting cost. It does turn food into damage, which is pretty hot. You can mow down your opponent's X2s. But overall, I think this is one of the weaker of the 4 mana hybrid cards. Fireborn Knight. This one seems really hard to deal with in combat, and it only gets better with equipment, which there seems like there's a reasonable amount of. Loch Dragon. Great card. Like the blue-white flyer, it's probably not enough of a reason to force blue-red, but it's excellent once you're already there. Actually, blue-red has so many payoffs for drawing an extra card in a turn. Maybe this just is a reason to be blue-red. Maybe I'm underestimating this one. Yeah, you're kind of like enabling that whole strategy, right? Maybe this is a good pack one, pick one. Rampart Smasher. 4 mana 5/5s can kill people really fast. This one might be a solid incentive to look towards red-green, just chonk people down, especially if red-green goes underdrafted. A Resolute Rider is an indestructible lifelinker is pretty obnoxious. It's hard to kill, it's hard to race. This is a solid reason to try and play white-black. Thunderous Snapper. One issue with this card is that you're limited as to how many 5+ drops you can actually play in your deck to potentially trigger this. No matter how many ramp spells are in your limited deck, you still can only play so many top-end cards. That said, you only really need to trigger it once before it becomes like quite good. And then if you trigger it multiple times, that's like borderline bomby. Not a reason to force blue-green, but great if you're already there. Stone Coil Serpent is a limited bomb. Probably not good enough for constructed, unless you're very hard up for artifact creatures. All right, now for our final category, the most exciting category that I'm sure you've all been waiting for, of constructed consideration cards. A lot of these cards will be bombs and limited as well. It's just that they're more interesting to talk about for constructed play. A lot of rares and mythics that just won't be opened that often in limited. There's a few common and uncommon staples and sideboard cards in here as well. Number 1, Acclaimed Contender. It looks like Knights has the support to be a real deck, and looking at 5 cards while also including a lot of useful non-Knight things in the hits section means that this card's a win. All That Glitters. Something like a cross between Ethereal Armor and Cranial Plating while still being more balanced than either of those 2 cards. I could actually see this seeing a little bit of modern play simply as like another much worse copy of Ethereal Armor, just because Ethereal Armor is one of the best pump spells in that deck. Charming Prince. While Flickerwisp has seen a ton of play over the years in various Aethervial decks, the issue with this card is that it can only blink or flicker your own permanents, which means that the other 2 abilities are going to have to pull some weight. Scry 2 and Gain 3 life are a couple of useful abilities, but we'll have to see if the utility makes up for the lack of raw power. A lot of people have been questioning Hall of Famer Gabriel Nassif about the card because it potentially fits into his Soul Herder deck enough that he put out a tweet discussing it. He also thought it was difficult to quantify Scry 2 or gaining 3 life. The Circle of Loyalty. This card is undeniably powerful, probably not quite good enough in a non-Knight deck, but it only takes a few Knights in play to make the casting cost very reasonable for what you're getting. I love that Contender can grab this one. Deafening Silence. Not a great standard card. Is a great older format sideboard card. One of the problems with hosers for faster decks is that even Ethersworn Canonist at a mere 2 mana can be too slow versus a turn 1 kill or a turn 2 kill on the draw, right? Sometimes your opponent doesn't have the win, but they just play a discard spell that takes your hoser, and then they have more time. With your hoser costing 1 mana, the chance of that is much lower, especially on the play, right? You just play turn 1 Deafening Silence, and now their discard spells don't have time to stop you. They will have plenty of answers, right? They'll have Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophies, Echoing Truths, cards like that. So it's not going to instantly win the game, but it is quality. It's faster than other hosers and thus more effective, right? It'll fit well into a Death and Taxes and potentially a Stoneblade type sideboard, but not much else. Know that this card really slows down cantrips, making it an awkward inclusion in tempo decks or decks that require a lot of filtering, like Miracles. Glass Casket, I think, is standard playable. Also a tutorable answer to Oath in Modern Urza. Harmonious Archon is a bomb! So much power and weird disruption wrapped up into a sweet, sweet flying body. Obvious limited bomb, and I think good enough for constructed. Anytime you're looking at a creature for constructed, you're like, yeah, I mean, this card's powerful, but that's so much mana, and it's just a creature, like, who really knows? But it sure looks good enough, though, doesn't it? It sure looks good enough. Hushbringer is a neat little card for the standard Blue-White Flyers deck. The issue with it, with using it as a hoser in Modern, is that most decks that could value a 1/2 body also value comes to play triggers. So I'm not sure what kind of deck would want this. Linden, the Steadfast Queen. Saffron Olive was talking about this deck on Twitter. He does a lot of like mini reviews as spoilers are coming out on Twitter. He's a great account to follow. Love him. Incredibly prolific content creator. Anyway, he was saying that there are quite a few Life Gain Matters cards that survive rotation, and that this card might help. I think he's right. It certainly does seem reasonable. I was messing around with white-black Life Gain in the M20 event on Arena, and this card doesn't really fit well into white-black due to the prohibitive casting cost, but maybe White Weenie wants to go in a more life-gaining style direction. I could see it. Worthy Knight. If you're building around knights anyway, a 2/2 that spits out a value 1/1 seems pretty darn good, even though the 1/1's not a knight. It would probably be too if it would spat out knight tokens, right? You play your Knight Lord, now you've got a 3/3 and a 2/2, play another, you get the idea. One of the more exciting cards in the set, Emry, Lurker of the Loch. When I first looked at this card, my eyes like kind of glazed over. I'm like, 3 mana for a 1/2, okay. Then I'm actually reading it, and I'm like, wait a minute. hold on. So this is going to very often be a 1 mana for a 1/2 with all these other sweet abilities. Sam Black had a tweet that a lot of people paid attention to. That basically, it's kind of weird that their timeline has not been blowing up with how broken Emry, Lurker of the Loch is in Modern. There's basically no chance that it's not the best Modern card in the set. So a lot of people have been talking about other strong Modern cards. There's been a lot of hype for those cards, and Sam thinks that Emry is the best. And Emry does look quite good. Yeah, I've seen a few different brews or brew ideas already. One is Jeskai Ascendancy and Mishra's Bauble. Like just tapping Emry to rebuy Mishra's Bauble is just like tap draw a card. Paradox Engine and Moxen works pretty well. Like you have 2 Mox Opals that you can chain together. With Emry, you just go infinite. I do think that's tempting, because Paradox Engine and Urza was already quite close to good enough. The one deck that hasn't gotten a lot of hype in Modern, but I think becomes actually good enough with this card, is Kethis. And there are a few different people that have been working on trying to break Kethis in Modern, and they make it look like borderline good enough. I've like scoured the internet, looked at a lot of different decks. There's a lot of different ways you can build, and I like where I'm at here. I'm very, very excited to test this deck out, because I think it's good. I think this deck's good on paper. Emry is a fantastic addition that might just push it into the meta. If you're not familiar with the standard version of the deck, what we're trying to do is set it up so that we have some kind of self-mill going, which is either Grinding Station or Excavator, and a Kethis in play. Kethis lets us flash back a bunch of legends. Note that the Hope of Ghirapur is free with Kethis in play, that either continues self-milling until we can set up a kill, or we can start milling the opponent if we're already there. Kethis can be activated multiple times per turn, which means that we can point our Grinding Station activations at the opponent, then activate Kethis again and mill for the same amount minus 2 activations, and then do it again, so on and so forth. So if we have 7 artifact legends, we can mill them for 21, then you exile 2 of them, do it again for 15, then exile 2 of them, do it again for 9, then 3. This is just my starting point for the deck. It's possible we need more snows and fetches for Astrolabe. The Urza deck plays between 14 and 17, for example, and we have 13 here. So a little light, but we could approach the mana completely differently with more legendary lands and cards like Chromatic Star instead of Astrolabe. I've seen some people do that. I think your mana base ends up much worse if you go that route. I think Astrolabe's like a pretty messed up card, and I think it fits this shell very, very well. Note that there is a very large incentive to playing these legendary lands, right? Because they're lands that once we mill them, you can exile them to Kethis and just like boost the number of legendary permanents in your deck. Boost your win rate, increase your consistency while decreasing the consistency of your mana. I was considering playing in Unburial Rites, so if you self-mill the Kethis, you can get it back that way. 4 mana is kind of a lot, though. My main philosophy with the sideboard is that I want versatile cards that are good in a lot of matchups, and I also want to be able to keep the legendary count high if I can. For example, normally Collective Brutality is a card that people lean on to beat Eidolon of the Great Rebels out of Burn. But here we're playing Oath of Kaya instead, because it's also a legendary card for Kethis. If I was playing in a format with a lot of burn, I would main deck the Oath of Kayas, of course. I think Vraska is probably too slow for most matchups, but it seems great versus the hate cards that blue-white control might bring in, like Stony Silence and Rest in Peace. And if it's not a removal spell in that matchup, it's still drawing cards and gaining loyalty. Seems really, really good there. Alright, yeah. So like I said, very excited about this deck. I had a lot of fun brewing my version with Emry. I think Emry is going to show up in a few different Modern decks and really make an impact on the format. But for now, we're going to move on. Gadwick the Wizened. Blue Sun Zenith with a body. Sign me up. This card's great. Into the story. While you're never really casting this card on turn 4, control decks probably want to be jamming disruption spells around then anyway. A single copy of Didn't Say Please already puts 4 cards in the opponent's graveyard. So I could see this card as a one of in a more typical control deck, and I could see up to 3 to 4 copies in decks that build around it a bit. 7 mana for an opposition is a hard sell, but 4 mana is really, really good. Like, better than Fact or Fiction good. The Magic Mirror. This card looks pretty bad to me, but it has built-in cost reduction. So who knows? Maybe it's busted. Or maybe it's just meant to be an EDH type thing. It's not meant to see standard play at all. Midnight Clock. A mana rock that eventually draws a pile of cards sounds awesome. Even if you never activate it, it's still a suspend 6, draw 7. Each 6 mana takes a full turn off the suspend, and you also get a mana rock during this entire time. Maybe that's not overpowered, but it's definitely awesome. Mirror Maid seems like an EDH card to me, as usually these situational clones don't end up making it in standard. Mystical Dispute. Not the sort of card I look to play in limited, since it scales very poorly, but it could show up in sideboards as a wonky spell pierce. Constructed sideboards. Opt! We got an Opt reprint! Quality stuff. Love that we get to keep this one in standard. In limited, you can draft as many as you'd like. Just don't take it over removal of bombs. And if you end up with 3 or 4 copies, you can start trimming lands. The draw an extra card ability being in this limited format and with a couple constructed quality cards means that Opt is going to continue to just see gobs of play. Vantress Gargoyle. I mean, I've played Jace's Phantasm in Modern before, and this seems like a much, much better version of that card. Unless you mulligan a lot, it's always going to be a mighty fine blocker on turn 2, and it works towards its own goal of being able to attack. This Gargoyle is going to murder people. This card is very good. It's very, very good. Ayara, First of Lochthwain. While the stats are underwhelming, I like that the Drain is a passive ability. Could be really good if Devotion makes a return to standard down the line. Right now, I don't see a shell for it. The Cauldron of Eternity. With 4 creatures in the graveyard, this card only costs 4 mana. Not a bad rate. The second passive ability prevents you from looping the same creature over and over, but ideally you're playing this in a self-mill deck that can keep the juice flowing that way. Epic Downfall. I mean, Lava Coil did see a lot of play, didn't it? Oathsworn Knight has solid stats with a very relevant creature type. Wrinkle, Master of Pranks. There's a lot of options on this one. 4 mana is a lot, but anytime a card has this much text, you kind of have to respect it. Haste means the abilities are kind of similar to Planeswalker abilities, but instead of working towards an ultimate, you're just beating the opponent senseless with your hasty flying 3-power creature. Spectre's Shriek. Seems like more of a sideboard card, if anything. Wishclaw Talisman. The card is fun and powerful, but probably too much work to make it one-sided. Witch's Vengeance seems great. Hit the opponent's stuff, but not your own. Why not? Embercleave has an interesting set of abilities. The cost reduction rewards you for going wide, but the combination of Double Strike and Trample means you want to put this on your largest creature. If you want to put this on an attacker, this will only cost 5 at the most. I'm going to put this in my Knights-based equipment deck because, of course, you're going to play it there, right? Why wouldn't you? But it might be good enough for something like Red-Green Beatdown as well. And, oh wow, giving Rotting Registrar Double Strike and Trample is kind of a beating, isn't it? Fervent Champion. Free equips are great. First Strike and Haste are great. Card in general seems sweet. Congrats to Javier. I'm very jealous. This is awesome. This is sweet. Fires of Invention. I don't have a brew for this one yet, but a lot of people are working on breaking it and calling it stuff like the next Wilderness Reclamation. Couple of notes. 1, activated abilities and creature lands are awesome with this card because it's something to do with your mana while you're playing your spells for free. 2, cards that eat up your mana in other ways, like Stasis, Winter Orb, so on, work very well for a similar reason. Matt Nass was talking about playing this and taking turns in Modern, particularly alongside Save of the Moment, since you don't actually care about the untap when you have fires in play. Iron Crag Feet. I'm having difficulty figuring out when I'd want to actually cast this in any format. Maybe the Second Coming of Dragonstorm. I think that works because the copies from Dragonstorm aren't actually getting cast. They're just going on the stack. Anyway, yeah. We'll see, I guess. Iron Crag Pyromancer. If you can trigger this once per limited game, it's great. If you can trigger it multiple times, it's a limited bomb. And that shouldn't be hard to do in this format. In Constructed, it could be a great engine card in a spell-based deck. It might be best as a sideboard card in Control. When the 0/4 body comes in to buy time and block and your opponent boards out the removal, you just trigger it a few times to kill their creatures. Robber of the Rich. There's a whole lot of text here, but I'm not sure it adds up to anything good. Reach seems largely worthless on a 2/2 haster, and the theft ability is pretty situational. I guess you're playing this because you want a hasty 2-drop. If you ever steal something, you're just happy about it. It's just bonus. You're just trying to kill the opponent with this, and then sometimes you get a card. Anyway, I could be underestimating it, but that's where I'm at this point, until I actually see them play. Torbran, Thane of the Red Fell. Wow, this card is busted. This is nutty in Cavalcade for sure, and it could lead to some sick turn 4 kills in Standard. I have fond memories of trying to kill people with Pyromancer's Swath and a Grape Shot back in the day, which makes me almost want to try this in Modern, but the 4 mana cost is probably too prohibitive. Happily Ever After. This is possibly the most hyped card of the set. People love free stuff. When building around this card, you can typically cut 1 or 2 lands, since drawing 1 in your opener means you should have an extra land drop early if you need it. In general, you should be looking to play it in decks where the hardcast version isn't that embarrassing, where it's a real card even if you don't get it for free. In Standard, Blue-Green Flash probably fits the bill, since you want to operate on the opponent's turn anyway. Personally, I'm on the this card is overhyped camp. That's where I'm at. But only because the hype level is that high. For example, I don't think this card slots that well into existing Tron. It's great for free, but regular Tron does a great job of cantripping through its deck with bauble effects. So you're going to draw this card naturally a lot. You're going to be having to pay 2 mana more often than it'll be free in that deck, I'm pretty sure. Now, some people have suggested playing more creatures so they can hit gas more often, which is interesting. That might change my evaluation if you're actually like changing the composition of the Tron deck. So I think it's going to be overplayed initially, as people like figure out where it really fits in and where it doesn't quite. But that's true with a lot of hype new cards, right? There's nothing wrong with people trying stuff out. The 2 decks that I'm most interested in trying this card are Neoform and Amulet. Let's check out my first stabs. Once Upon a Time looks great in this deck, which is hungry for green combo pieces and cantrips to pitch to Allosaurus Rider. This card should let us keep hands that are missing a land or an Allosaurus Rider, and it can help us see Simian Spirit Guide more often as well, which should increase their chance for a turn 1 kill slightly. If you're casting this for 2 mana, then you probably don't have a nut draw, but a turn 3 kill isn't out of the question with this deck by any means. I think this card's great here. As an aside, not related to Once Upon a Time, I started playing a 3rd Autochthon Wurm, and I have loved it. Sometimes the opponent deals you damage early on, and you need more life. Sometimes you have to pitch a worm to an Allosaurus Rider, and then it's not there to pitch to a shoal later. Anyway, having another giant creature to pitch to shoal has reduced my fizzle rate a noticeable amount. And even though I don't see other Neoform players using 3, I'm very confident in that number. / end rant. Amulet is the type of deck where you have tons of extra mana lying around, which means that hard casting Once Upon a Time isn't as bad as it is in basically any other deck. It might not even take up all of your turn 2. if you have like a turn 2 Azusa draw, you're still like doing other things on top of casting this card. On top of that, this deck has a ton of different lands to grab, and as well as the Primeval Titans and Azusas that make the whole thing work. So most of the deck is hits for Once Upon a Time, which makes it phenomenal here. Updating this archetype was relatively easy because the deck usually has some filler slots. In this case, I think it makes sense to move away from the Karn-based builds that we've been seeing lately, since you'll have a turn 3 Primeval Titan much more often, and because Once Upon a Time doesn't hit Karn. I think Amulet was a totally reasonable card before this printing, and I could see it becoming unreasonable with just a small boost. So, alright, back to other cards. The Great Henge. Maybe casting Galta so many times has broken my brain, but this card seems nuts to me. Even with a stock vanilla curve of turn 2, 2/2, turn 3, 3/3, you can play this on turn 4. And in Constructed, you should be able to do much, much better than that, and actually start playing a decent creature off the mana and drawing a card right on turn 4. This card looks great. Questing Beast. This word salad probably does too many things to not see a ton of play. Pick them up if you like aggressive green decks. Murder some folks. Yeah, do good things. Return of the Wild Speaker. This is so much better than Bounty of Might. Although I don't think Bounty of Might really saw Constructed play, did it? The question is it good enough for Constructed, right? I'm guessing so, but I'm not sure at all. This does work in a lot of situations, since if you just like have a random creature, like a random 4/4, you can just like draw some cards. And if you have a few creatures, whether they're any good or not, then you can steal games out of nowhere. This card is at its best in mid-range creature mirrors, and it's at its worst against sweepers, which turn off both halves of the card. Return to Nature. Disenchant gets another slight tweak, another slight upgrade by hitting a specific graveyard card as well. Lovely stuff. Perfectly fine sideboard card in Limited 2, of course, and you can sometimes play a Disenchant effect like this as a 23rd filler slot in Limited, though that's more of a desperation measure. Wildborn Preserver. This card looks almost custom-made for the blue-green flash deck. In fact, let's see a rough draft of what that deck might look like post-rotation. This might end up being too many comes into play tapped lands in the earlier turns. I'm not sure if Fabled is better than Temple, Fabled Passage, but we have a lot of double color requirements, which makes me think the dual land is probably going to be better. We lose Spell Pierce and Dive Down, which were nice, efficient ways of protecting our threats. Fortunately, we gain more sweet creatures, and thus can become more threat dense. Once Upon a Time seems great in this deck, allowing us to shave a lane or two, while also being solid filtering in the late game, helping us find our threats. So we can't protect our threats as well, right? But we have more of them and we can find them more often, so maybe that's a fine trade-off. In most decks, I wouldn't be excited to pay the full cost for Once Upon a Time, but it does look really good here, I think. Next card, Yovo, Lord of Ghirapur. Good in mana, good in mono green as a 1 or 2 of, not great elsewhere. Dance of the Manse. Doesn't excite me with what we currently have in Standard. Doom Foretold. I thought this card was busted until I realized it would crack itself if you don't have something else to sacrifice to it. It still might be really, really good in the right shell. Just be sure to reread it. read it a couple of times before you decide to jam it. Feyburrow Elder. At least a 2/2, could be up to a 5/5. On its own, it's a slightly bigger Gyre Engineer. It's certainly powerful, and it seems reasonable in just a 3-color deck, but it might be on the cusp of not quite good enough. Hard to get away with 3 casting cost mana dorks in a Teferi format, right? You're just going to play this, it gets bounced, they draw a card. You're so far behind. Garruk, Cursed Huntsman. Wow! 6 mana is a lot for a Planeswalker, but this one does a lot. Down ticks for value, spits out multiple wolves per turn, and the ultimate could be reached dangerously quickly. It's hard to be sure about anything that costs this much mana, but I would be very surprised if Garruk didn't see play. The Royal Scions. A lot of people are sleeping on this. This is another 3 mana Planeswalker that takes up to 6. The second ability is kind of weirdly aggressive in comparison to the rest of the card. I did see people pairing it with Dreadhorde Arcanist, which, I mean, yeah, dope. But I think there are people that are going to be estimating how fast this card ultimates. And it starts with a lot of loyalty, and the ultimate is quite strong for on a 3 mana walker. Stormfist Crusader. I would say that too much has to go right for this card to be good enough for constructed, but it does have a relevant creature type. 2 mana for a 2/2 menace. They're pretty good stats and limited. Sorceress Spyglass. Solid reprint is solid. Love having colorless answers to Planeswalkers in Standard. Castle Ardenvale. A pre-flipped Adanto is a damn fine land. Damn fine land indeed. It costs 1 more to activate, and you don't get the lifelinking body, but honestly, just having an uncounterable threat every turn versus control is where Adanto really, really shined. And this card is that. This card's really, really good. Nice little bit of resiliency versus sweeper decks. Castle Embereth. Great deck in go-wide strategies. Might even see some niche modern play. Castle Garenbrig. Most people see this as helping facilitate a fast Primeval Titan in modern Valakut decks. It could work in Amulet too, but Amulet already has a lot of lands that tap for 2 mana, so I'm not sure it'll actually see play there. In Standard, getting an extra mana for Krasis seems like a real thing. I haven't started putting it in my Krasis decks yet, but I'm excited to try it, and it might become stock in Krasis. Castle Lochthwain. Aggro black decks get a good tool for when they're hellbent. Much, much worse in control, right? Castle Vantress. This card is going to see a ton of play, since the ability is one of the least narrow, the most free in terms of deck construction. Fabled Passage. I think this card is going to see a lot of play. It's not really a hot take. I think this card is like clearly playable. I'm surprised there hasn't been more buzz about it. In the early turns, it's just an Evolving Wilds. Sure, but in the biggest downside of Evolving Wilds, or coming to play tap lands at all, is that when you need that one last mana to play your sweet expensive spell, and you're sitting on it for forever, and you finally top deck the wrong land, you have to wait another turn. That's the downside. And this is a fixer that fixes that problem. Heck yes. Also, I love this art. This art is great. Yeah, huge props. Dwarven Mine. In Modern, this is just a mountain for Valakut. That it's a fetchable that can get a blocker to go up the board. Kind of similar to Secure Tribe Elder, right? Kind of a similar bent. It's also a different mountain, a different land for Field of Ruin. And the Valakut decks in Modern have started playing Field of Ruin, so super relevant. Mystic Sanctuary, a fetchable island that rebuys miracles to the top of the library. This land is going to see a ton of play in Legacy. I could see you're probably going to play you're probably only going to play like 1 or 2. It is a non-basic in regards to back to basics, right? But I could see it in Modern decks too, simply because it turns a fetch land into a Noxious Revival back to a key spell. But yeah, it seems great in Legacy. Put a Terminus on top of your deck. A lot of times when you're playing a fair deck against miracles, the first Terminus doesn't kill you, but then the second one is just backbreaking after you've like reloaded. So turning a turning a flooded strand into another terminus. Oh my god, right? Oh my god. And then a lot of the times, even if you like haven't found a miracle spell, like just putting a brainstorm on top of your library could really be really strong. Idyllic Grange doesn't strike me as a useful fetch target, which means it's probably not going to see as much play as the others. Witch's Cottage. I'm not as big a fan of Volrath's Stronghold as pretty much everybody else in the world, which I found from my chat yelling at me during many cube drafts over the years. But this is a little bit different. It taps for colored mana, unlike Volrath's Stronghold, which ruins your mana base for dubious payoffs. And everybody in the world overvalues. I'm the only one that's right on this card. I'm not overstating anything at all. Anyway, this card taps for colored mana, and like the others, it is indeed fetchable. I don't expect to play it, but I wouldn't be surprised if other people did. I also wouldn't be surprised if this card is good. I wouldn't be surprised if it saw no play. Wouldn't be surprised if it like became a key part of some archetype. What about in Amulet? So you can like rebuy earlier things. Maybe that's not good enough. But you can like Teleria West for it. So they kill your Primeval Titan, and you Teleria West for this. And then, no, that's probably not good enough. Because you could just go get another Primeval Titan. Yeah, it's not good enough there. Forget everything that I just said. I'm rambling. We're almost done. Let's wrap this up. Tournament Grounds. Nice little fixer meant to push Knights. Knights plus equipment in Standard. Maybe a Tri-Land will go a long way towards making that deck a thing. All right. That's it. That's all the cards. Final thoughts. Whew. That's all, folks. I'm sure that a ton of these evaluations are off. I haven't actually played with any of these cards yet. But this is to be expected when you're examining cards before the pre-release. That said, people still seem to like these overviews, and I do think it's useful content. What's important is that you have another perspective to bounce your own evaluations off of, which can help us grow and improve as players. Just remember to stay fluid in your evaluations and trust your testing. Trust your testing more than what someone tells you, but don't overvalue individual games. You want to see a few repetitions with the card before you really have some kind of an idea of how good it is. Hope you enjoyed this video series. I had a lot of fun doing this, especially brewing sweet modern decks, which is some of the most fun I have playing Magic, even to this day, is just brewing decks. It's oh my god, it's so much fun. Thanks again to Wizards for supporting their content creators. Yeah. Another big shout out to Cynthia, the art director for Magic, who absolutely crushed this set. Big shout out to everybody that worked on the set, because I think it's real good. From a flavor perspective, I'm not actually sure about the actual gameplay because I haven't actually gotten a chance to play it, but it was a lot of fun to read through and whatnot. Anyway, CalebD out. CalebD out. Oh, if you have criticisms, if you have constructed feedback, I would love to hear it because I'm trying to up my YouTube game. This time was pretty crazy, like doing the entire set review off stream for YouTube. It was a lot of work, I think, but I did enjoy doing the mechanics overviews. I think that might be a better way to go than a full set overview on YouTube. I might just do a more sane workload of like top 10 constructed and top 10 limited next set. We'll see. Maybe people like this. Maybe people like this too. I had fun. All right, CalebD out. CalebD out again.